Aloha, it's Dave Lawrence. How you doing? I hope you're awesome and appreciate you being here, joining me for a very timely chat, and it is with a rock legend, too. He's been my guest before many years ago, back in 2000, on what was then called a farewell tour. He is in the news, however, today a lot these days. A variety of topics. He and his pioneering group doing dates throughout the year, celebrating their 35th anniversary as a band. You may have seen his hit TV show, Family Jewels, on A&E. Or perhaps you saw the story that he'll be a judge on the new TV show Jingles that's coming out in the fall. But the big one that's getting a lot of attention is about a new book. It's already out and on store shelves, and when you see it in the bookstore, it's almost hard to find because it's not your typical rock star book at all. It's almost historic in its style with fascinating art from throughout the ages and unique, very personal commentary about what is often called the oldest profession in the world. The book has generated a lot of interest, and rightly so. It is an honor to hear about it from the author, bassist, vocalist, songwriter, producer, actor, entrepreneur, and author of several books, including this new one, Ladies of the Night, a historical and personal perspective on the oldest profession in the world. A great thrill to bring you from KISS, Gene Simmons. Aloha, Gene.
Hi, guys.
Thank you very much for taking time for me. I appreciate your time.
My pleasure. You can interrupt any time. Thank you.
Gene's new book, Ladies of the Night, a historical and personal perspective on the oldest profession in the world. Gene, a classy-looking book this is. Mazel tov.
Thank you.
I'm very impressed. It's a coffee table.
Now, do the Gentiles of the world know what you're talking about with Mazal Tov?
Congrats.
That's right.
And
Thank you.
My compliments on a really nice book. And there's an irony in it, in the fact that you've never yourself used a prostitute.
Well, a lady of the night. Throughout history, that area, that institution, that profession was often, throughout history, the only way a woman can empower herself. Remember, her choices were to get married and have children, be beaten up by her husband, can't sue him in the old days.
Right.
Throughout history, no recourse. She could be beaten and flogged for having all sorts of issues. If she wasn't married and she simply wanted to have the company of men in any way, she was usually stoned to death, even today in some parts of the world. So, needless to say, some of these women, Mata Hari, even Mary Magdalene, were women who went out there, decided what they wanted to do, and decided to charge for it. Now, everybody has something to say about that, but this book is not about that. This is a historical, artistic overview of the oldest profession in the world, including museum paintings, artifacts from the brothels of Rome, the courtesans of Europe's Renaissance period, and so on.
It's a fascinating collection. I actually have it. And you show the spectrum from courtesans and geishas to window girls in Amsterdam, and you do it in such a classy and objective way. And I was curious, at the end of putting this together and doing all the research that you've obviously done on the international customs, how come different cultures make sex so open or, like ours, conversely
Well, you're right.
taboo?
It has to do with culture. For instance, in the Islamic world, religion states the issues, which is women are second-class citizens. They can't, talk to men in public and all this kind of stuff. So, of course, ladies of the night are going to be treated very harshly, even put to death. America is a remnant of the Puritan ethic, which is to say, when the Puritans first came over, because they were religiously being hounded by the other denominations of Christianity,
Right.
got a toehold in America and espoused values, some of which are really good, family values, but they were very, very uptight sexually. And that meant that a lady of the night who didn't want to get married and wanted to charge for her services, was not looking for a relationship in this country, is reviled and cast into the shadows. Whereas in Europe, it's not only legal, but a part of their culture. Because it existed in the past and continues to exist. In a large part, it is, in fact, the oldest profession in the world and continues to be.
And an interesting note, when you compare to Europe, there's also in the book chapters about other areas of the world for instance, it's almost like a caste system in India, the way I was reading it, some sort of a hierarchy.
It's not only a caste system for ladies of the night. Culturally and even skin tone, the darker you are, the lower the caste system. You're not allowed to talk to lighter people. So one of the biggest operations there is a skin tone. People torture themselves because culture dictates all kinds of things if you let it. And, there are the untouchables who can't talk to the other ones, and the lepers who are the lowest rung, and ladies of the night always continue to be relegated to the shadows if you allow the culture to do that. But again, Ladies of the Night, my book, is not an advocacy group. I'm not telling anybody to change their minds. This is more historical. If my book was called Nudes Through the Ages and was an artistic overview of how paintings depicted the female body, it would be an art book, but It certainly wouldn't tell you to rip off your clothes and run around naked, unless you wanted to, of course.
Yeah, no, you have a very mature sort of perspective that kind of comes with where you are in your career.
Well, I've always had this point of view and always espoused it, which is that if a naked woman is in a Rubens painting in a museum, it's art. But if it's in Playboy, it's porn. And I believe it's all ridiculous.
The distinction you're saying between the two.
Yeah, and who's to say what the distinction is?
Let me ask you a question. When you think of Ladies of the Night and you think of your image through time as
I don't care. Image is for losers. You ever see a dog chase its tail?
Right.
First you create an image and then it traps you. I don't care. But you make your own image and change it when you damn well want to. If people get it, that's nice, and if not, just get online. The line of complaints forms on my left-hand side over there. Just, take your turn in line.
Have you always had a fascination with this and with...
Everybody has. Every woman and every female. We hardly talk about it, and yet some of the women that we see, the high-end call girls, very charming, educated, and you always sort of wonder, they're dark, they're kind of dark personality. And when you meet some of them, you kind of go, gee, they're charming, humorous, they're real people, except they don't lead the same life as you and I do. The question is, are they any less human? But again, the book is simply an artistic, historical overview of the profession, not an advocacy book.
And it shows things from a perspective that maybe people in America had never thought of.
Oh, they think about it all the time. Otherwise, the ladies wouldn't exist here.
I guess the open-minded, the way that it's not looked down upon in certain places.
Although in strictly cash terms, it's tens of billions of dollars. It rivals the entertainment industry. The largest content that goes out there is often referred to as porn, which often encompasses women who simply decide to charge for it.
And it's a large industry, as you said, billions and billions of dollars. How many of these women do you think, you talked about a darker personality?
In the way culture looks at them in America, not in Europe. When Mitterrand, who was the head of France, went to his grave, it was televised rather publicly, so you saw it on TV. His wife was there, so were his mistresses. By the way, mistress is a nice way of saying that he kept them fed and paid for their apartments and so on and so forth. He paid for their services.
That's right. Right, kind of like your example in the beginning of the book with the mastodon meat. You go get the mastodon meat, I'll give you some of mine, basically.
That's right. I'll give you some of this for some of that.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, no, I see the lineage. It's a fascinating thing. Finally, Gene, one final question before I wrap it up with you. A lot of people admire you, especially in Hawaii. We have a huge military contingent out here, so a lot of them are going to pay a special note to what you say here. Is there any words of advice or encouragement you can provide to people who, like the folks in the military, are under stress or pressure and moments of doubt? Anything you could provide as encouragement or inspiration?
America hasn't been good. In fact, I'm embarrassed to say how we've treated our men and women in the service, a volunteer service, I hasten to add. And I think it's the crime of the century. We should, every time I talk to people, I always make sure they know. If you see somebody in a uniform, or if you find out they're in the military and you're in a Starbucks getting a cup of coffee, they don't want you to buy them a free cup of coffee. Let them stand in front of you Let him stand in for, walk up to somebody who serves the country voluntarily and shake their hand, look into their eyes, and tell them it counts. It does. They're not looking for your money. They're not looking to be on TV and become famous, just like us buttholes over here. They're better than you and I ever will be. They're a higher form of life. They're what makes America great.
I'm sure they appreciate you saying that. I appreciate your time very much, Brother Gene.
It's my pleasure.
You're an animal. Very good luck to you, Gene. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Aloha.
Hi, it's Gene Simmons with my friend Dave Lawrence doing the only show that matters, but you guys know that.